On this live edition of the Chronicles of a Gooner, we're going to be looking back at Arsenal's defeat at Villa Park. Where does this leave us? Are you trusting in the process? Where do we go from here? Was it just an off day or are the problems deeper? We'll be discussing all of that on this live edition of the show. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to another live edition of the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast brought to you by 90 Min. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou. On this show, we're going to be looking back at the game between Aston Villa and Arsenal at Villa Park. Of course, Dean Smith's side 1-0 winners in the end, thanks to a deflected goal from Ollie Watkins after an error from Cedric early on, opened the door for the host, and from then on it was always going to be an uphill battle for Arsenal, and unfortunately we were unable to reply, unable to turn the game around, unable to close the deficit on Aston Villa, and subsequently came away from the Midlands empty-handed. Now, normally we bring you these post-match shows on the day of the game, so I want to get an apology out there first of all as to why that didn't happen. As many of you will know, I work on the Saturday evening slot game, and I had to leave as soon as we finished the live watch-along of yesterday's game to get down to the studio. I have to get there with plenty of time to spare, so that was why we didn't bring you a show directly after the game. But a big thanks to those who did join us on the live watch along. And if you're listening to us via the audio platforms and you fancy coming and joining us on one of the watch alongs, feel free to do so. They are only available on the YouTube channel though. So if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, get over there, get involved, and we'd love to have your company for some of the live matches coming up. Where to begin with this one? It's a very different feeling to the feeling after the Wolves game, because after the Wolves game, it was anger for me. It was a feeling of injustice. It was a feeling of a feeling that I used to feel back when Arsene Wenger was boss. And I'm not talking about in the last couple of years of his tenure. I'm talking about before that, in the sense of I can remember lots of times coming away from games being really angry and feeling like the victims of poor officiating. And in a weird way, going back to that feeling of years gone by where Arsenal were good enough on the pitch to win a game of football, but had it snatched away from them because of some poor officiating. In a weird way, that made me feel a little bit better. I can't even explain it. It's a weird feeling because obviously I was angry at the time. I was disappointed. You guys would have tuned into the shows the next day and understood how I was feeling then. But I kind of, that whole Arsenal against the world thing, it kind of reminded me of better days, of better years. I've got to be honest. Not that I want referees to be giving us, to be giving decisions against us or anything like that. But when it did happen, and obviously it was out of our hands, and obviously you can't go back and change that, there was a little bit of that to it for me anyway. Focusing though on the performance yesterday, let's kick off by going through the team that Mikel Arteta selected. And I don't think many people can have any issues with the team. You know, the team I went with was pretty much exactly the same, barring Renarsson over Ryan. But that was because at the time we did the preview, it was touch and go whether Matt Ryan was going to be fit. He was fit in the end. And I actually thought he had a pretty decent game in between the sticks for Arsenal, made some really good saves. You know, the kind of, he made a couple of saves in the second half, which were a little bit more, you know, appealing on the eye, you know, diving left, diving right. But for me, the best save that Matt Ryan made yesterday was that one in the first half after Villa had already scored, where Traore went through on goal and tried to just dink it over the Australian, who really read what the striker was going to do, used his experience there, stayed on his feet, didn't go down, and managed to get a claw on it and keep it out. The Traore tried to sell him the dummy and then the little dink over him. And most goalkeepers, 9 times out of 10 normally fall for that. It's instinct. But Matt Ryan kept composed and he stood up and he made himself big. And that was a really, really impressive save for me. Sorry. So, credit to Matt Ryan for that. Really enjoyed his performance. I've seen some people on social media. There were some people even during our watch along questioning whether he could have done a little bit better for Aston Villa's goal. But when you watch it again, and I have watched it back a number of times now, he does make a move to dive already when Watkins gets the shot off, and that deflection just kind of makes his dive irrelevant, if that makes sense. He's already going down. He's already thrown his weight to go down a certain way, and then he's having to almost hyperextend and stretch further because the deflection has taken it at a slightly different angle. So I think it's really, really harsh to dig out Matt Ryan for that. I know it's not necessarily the general consensus, but I have seen a little bit of that around social media, particularly at the time of the goal. Literally, like immediately after it, there were people talking about that. So, yeah, I just wanted to make that point. I thought Matt Ryan had a decent game in between the sticks for Arsenal. Across the back line, I thought everybody pretty much did okay, actually. Cedric obviously had that brain fart moment, didn't he? Where he tried to lay the ball off to Gabriel. Traore nicked it, and that was how Aston Villa's goal came about. Just a sloppy mistake. And as Mikel Arteta said, we can't keep giving teams goals. And he's right. We can't keep giving teams goals. I completely agree with that. But the reason us giving teams the odd goal here and there is a major problem is because we're not scoring enough ourselves. It's because we're not clinical enough. When we get almost gifted situations in the final third, you've seen it since the kind of the press has intensified a little bit. You've seen Arsenal winning balls back in opposition halves or, final thirds, but we're not as ruthless for some reason. We're not as clinical in those positions. And I'm not saying, that you want to give goals away or that you should be accepting of it, but it is going to happen from time to time, especially when you're very focused on playing out from the back. It didn't necessarily come from Arsenal playing out from the back, but what I'm trying to say is, given our style of play, losing the ball sometimes in your defensive third or in your own half is it's a risk that comes with that style. So the point I'm trying to get to is that if we're clinical enough, if we take the opportunities that come our way, if we're able to get the final passes right in the final third, if we're able to open teams up, then it isn't that big of a deal, because overall Arsenal's defensive record this season is very, very respectable. Just conceded 23 goals in 23 games. The only teams with a better defensive record than us are Manchester City, who've been outstanding. Tottenham Hotspur, they've conceded one less than us. And that's it. Nobody else has a better defensive record than us in the entire division. Manchester United, who are in second, they've conceded 7 more goals than us. Leicester have conceded 2 more. Liverpool have conceded 6 more. West Ham, 5 more. Everton, 5 more. So the defense is not, although it cost us yesterday, although we made a mistake at the back yesterday, which ultimately gave Aston Villa a chance to get in front, get their noses in front and make it very, very difficult. At the end of the day, as much as it was an error and it was a mistake in that department, Arsenal as a defensive unit have been improved under Mikel Arteta. There is no taking that away from him. You can say whatever you like about certain other aspects of his management. You could argue that in his obsession with getting that defensive shape right, we've lost a little bit at the other end of the pitch, and you probably have a really valid point. But that's one area in which I think Mikel Arteta deserves some praise, because there's no doubt about it. The shape's better. The reset is better when we lose the ball. We're not getting as exposed on the transitions as often as we were previously. Still a long way to go. Still work to be done. Don't get me wrong. But that is certainly one of the positives of Mikel Arteta's tenure so far. Moving into the midfield, it was Granit Xhaka alongside Thomas Partey. I thought Partey looked a little bit leggy again. He didn't look 100% at the races, but then he would almost burst into life at certain moments and just carry the ball a few yards forward once he gets into his stride. I did feel actually yesterday that at times Thomas Partey probably held on to the ball a little bit too long. There were certain situations where you want to see him just take one touch and move it so we can keep going, we can keep the play moving. And I thought one of the problems we had in the first half was that we didn't move the ball with enough zip, with enough tempo. We would allow Aston Villa to shift across the pitch as a unit before we'd switch the ball. It would just, everything was taking us an absolute age. So I'm not having a go at Thomas Partey, but I did think he contributed to that. It's bad enough when you got a left back who's right-footed and he's always got to cut inside, always got to take a touch. That adds a little bit of a stutter to your play. But when your midfielder's taking an extra touch as well, I think that can be a problem. Granit Xhaka, I thought was brilliant again, as he has been for weeks now. So not much new to say on Granit Xhaka. He continues to perform, continues to be a leader of this side. Moving further forward, Emile Smith-Rowe looked off the pace to me. He had that one really interesting run, didn't he, in the second period where he kind of danced past a couple of Aston Villa players and went to get his shot away, and there was Tyrone Mings to block it. But Emile Smith-Rowe just looked a little bit fatigued to me. Now, I know people will look at his season so far and say he's not even played that many games of football. And you're absolutely right. But I think he's been overplayed in a short period of time. I think that, it may not have been such a big issue for somebody else. But for him, who's been struggling with fitness anyway, I think it's really showing now. I think he looked leggy. I was actually surprised to see him stay on the pitch when Martin Ødegaard came on. I thought that would be a like-for-like sub. It wasn't in the end. Both of them had a little bit of a spell playing from the right-hand side. But again, one of the positives from yesterday was I thought the Norwegian did pretty well. I thought he looked lively. He was very involved, missed an opportunity. He should have definitely hit the target at minimum there. But encouraging signs from him. Moving further forward, I thought Nicolas Pepe was good again on the left until he was moved to the right, and then kind of just went back to that predictable Nicolas Pepe that we've all been frustrated by in recent times. Bukayo Saka, did pretty well again as well. Lacazette did okay too. I felt like at times, and I know this was highlighted on Match of the Day by Ian Wright, the movement wasn't quite there in that front three. But, you're talking about them playing against a very organised Aston Villa defence. I was watching Aston Villa's defensive shape yesterday very, very carefully, very narrow, very compact. Their fullbacks didn't commit as far forward as they probably normally do. They were probably wary of the threat that somebody like Pepe and somebody like Saka can bring. So, yeah, it was... in terms of individual performances, I don't look at it and want to dig anybody out in particular. There were certain elements to Arsenal's game that weren't good enough, and we've touched on the defensive mistake. A lot of Arsenal fans have also picked up on the point that Aston Villa had quite a few attempts at goal in the second half. I mentioned the Matt Ryan saves already, but ultimately they were at a period in the game, I would say, when Arsenal were essentially throwing the kitchen sink at Aston Villa, and that's going to happen. That's going to happen. You go in search of an equaliser, teams will try and pick you off. That's just the way it works. And similar to the thing about playing out from the back, it's a risk that you have to accept when you're in the situation that we found ourselves in at the end of the game. Some of the substitutions Mikel made have raised some questions. The Ødegaard one was fine with me. I thought that worked quite well. I thought he added something to the team. Aubameyang for Lacazette, that really didn't work, did it? It just didn't work. And again, we find ourselves walking into that territory of what is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's best position? And for me, it's simply not through the middle, not in this system, not in this team. And, he was hardly involved. We put a couple of crosses into the box. He tried to make things happen, tried to get on the end of them, but he just wasn't anywhere near as involved as you want him to be. And I feel like perhaps Arteta was wrong to make that change. That's the change I look at and I'd say, Not sure about that one. And then, of course, there was the decision to bring Willian on. And that one has earned Mikel Arteta some serious heat as well. Ultimately, I don't really have an issue with that. I mean, how many wingers, people were calling for Martinelli, how many wingers or wide attackers was he going to throw on the pitch? You got to remember he'd left Granit Xhaka essentially in the midfield by himself as well after Thomas Partey went off. I'm not saying Willian particularly played in the centre of midfield, but just having another player on the pitch that can do a central role is probably part of Mikel Arteta's thinking in that one. But look, again, I don't think that's worth beating the manager up over. I know there are a lot of fans that are unhappy with that can't understand why Willian got a look in ahead of Gabriel Martinelli. But, it is what it is. That's not the reason we didn't win this game. It's not the reason we didn't find an equaliser. We didn't find an equaliser because we weren't intense enough in the key areas. We weren't sharp enough. We weren't brave enough. We weren't tricky enough. There wasn't enough guile in the side. There wasn't, there were very few players who were willing to get on the ball and just carry the ball themselves and try and force the issue, make things happen, similarly to the way Jack Grealish does. So, yeah, ups and downs at the moment for Arsenal. There were always going to be downs. We had that really impressive run, got that really good win at Southampton in the Premier League, and then we had the draw with Manchester United, which I thought again was a positive performance. But unfortunately, things have gone against us in the games at Wolves and at Aston Villa, and we're going to talk about a couple of the refereeing decisions that went against us. And I guess when I look at them, when I look at the Saka one, look, I accept that Saka is a fair way away from goal still. I accept that there is a chance a defender could come across and close him down. But why is it... It just feels like we never get the rub of the green. That's kind of where I'm going with this. For me, I was kind of 50-50 on that one. And I was actually more incensed by the one on Lacazette where Martinez is clearly pulling his shirt. That for me was a stonewall penalty. I don't care if Lacazette leaned on him first. I don't care what happened in the build up to that. As Martinez has been on social media trying to kind of justify that there was a bit of pushing and shoving and pulling from both sides of that one. But that was the one that really incensed me. The penalty thing. Goalkeepers just get this kind of unlimited protection in the modern game, which is just so wrong. Nobody bothered to have a look at it. Nobody bothered to, nobody bothered to kind of take it on and see it for what it really was, which was a goalkeeper full of the striker's shirt in his left hand, pulling him back. Like, it was just nonsense. It was a nailed on penalty for me. And I was really disappointed not to see that one given. And the reason I bring up the Saka one, I said it was debatable whether anybody would have got back to, to defend it. And I mean that. I think that one was 70-30 towards being a red card and not being a red card. But what I'm saying is I accept there's a debate there. But then it's a build-up, isn't it? If there's two decisions that you feel should go your way and you don't get either of them, that's why people are upset. That's why people are frustrated. That's why people are talking about the incompetence of the officials in this Premier League every single weekend, because it happens every single weekend. I was commentating yesterday on the game between Fulham and West Ham United. A dreadful game of football. Awful. It was dire. Literally, I was watching the clock, counting down the minutes until it finished. It was that bad. Such a bad game. And in stoppage time, I'm sure you've all seen it, an incident takes place between Alexander Mitrovic and Thomas Souček, who is clearly just trying to lift his arm over Mitrovic so he can get away from him. Mitrovic marking him really, really tightly. The ball's not even coming to the box, when it's been pulled up. VAR have sent Mike Dean over, and, VAR is right to highlight it because from VAR's perspective, at first glance, they've seen a player go down holding his face. They've seen arms flailing about. I get that. But Mike Dean, he almost bopped over to the screen, didn't he? Now, put his hand on his hips, watched the same replay over and over and over again. But we all knew that he was going to get out the red card because referees in the Premier League want to make it all about themselves. In particular, that man, Mike Dean. He's an absolute disgrace. There's a chance that we could see now the FA overturn a second Mike Dean red card decision in the space of 4 or 5 days. That's embarrassing. Demote the guy. It's terrible. And then you're watching games like today, the game between Liverpool and Manchester City, and Mo Salah diving down onto the ground like as if he's Tom Daly or something. It's just terrible, and that's the way our game has gone. It's horrible. It's really bad, and lots of you pointing out in the comments, Peter Walton on BT Sport. I mean, you heard it here on the Chronicles of a Gooner the other day when Keith Hackett was on. Peter Walton will be on the PGMOL's payroll. He ain't going to sit there and slag them off. He will do what they all do, and he'll sit there and pretend he's on the side of the fans and pretend he cares about the sport of football. But actually, all he's doing is hiding behind laws that are poorly written, that are not fit for purpose anymore, just like all the rest of them. So if you're like me, when you see Peter Walton pop up on your TV, it's infuriating. I've got to be honest. Get some of your thoughts in on yesterday's performance. Get some of your questions in as well, and we'll come to those in just a few minutes' time. Don't forget as well, if you haven't already, make sure that you hit the like button on the video. If you're listening via the audio, be sure to give us a review. Make sure it's a 5-star one, of course. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, what are you waiting for? Make sure you hit the subscribe button. If you're also interested in becoming a member of the channel, feel free to do so. All you need to do is click on the link in the description and it will take you to our membership page, from which you can decide from the 3 tiers of membership available. This week's members only content, which is available to gold members and above, was this piece on Granit Xhaka, where we looked at his importance to the side. At the request of some of you that are already members, this week's video is going to be a deep dive into Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. What's going on with him? Why is he not suited to playing through the middle? Are we wasting him on the left? We're going to be exploring that in great detail, and that video will be out on Wednesday. So looking forward to pulling that one together. Bit of a deep dive, statistical analysis, and to try and make sense of what's going on with Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang right now. So, yeah, very much looking forward to putting that one together. Right, let's go over to the live comments and see what you guys are saying. Lots of you talking about Peter Walton, but let me pick this one out from Xander, one of our members, who says, watching the Six Nations this weekend, it is refreshing to see officials who have complete control, respect of players, and clear lines of communication to everybody. And VAR is being used in the correct manner. I couldn't agree more. Rugby is the prime example of how you do it. And people will say, it's a different sport. And of course, it is a different sport, but it's similar in the way that they can be so many different outcomes, and a lot of things are subjective. So it is proof that it can work. It is proof that it can be used in a respectful manner. It can be communicated clearly, and then you see players dealing with officials in a far more respected manner. So yeah, good point. Alex McCarthy says, problem with referees and VAR is because they only look at the one incident. They never consider the human element to the game. Yep, another good point on that. Lots of you laughing at Peter Walton's comments. Peter Walton said that VAR isn't there to get the correct decision. Yeah, he's lost the plot, hasn't he? He's lost the plot. Omar says, although the referee was at fault for our loss, we do need to do our job and not blame the referees for our loss. Yeah, I'm not blaming the referees, but sometimes in football, when things aren't necessarily going your way, you need the rub of the green. You need a stroke of luck, and we're not getting that at the moment. We had to play with 10 men at Wolves the other night for a red card that was very, very harsh. We've established what the law says. We've gone through all that to death. I don't want to keep going over it. But then it's like today's incident in the game between Liverpool and City, when Ruben Diaz seemingly fouled Mo Salah. Well, did Ruben Diaz make an attempt to win the ball? I don't think he did, but he stayed on the pitch. He got a yellow card. It's that kind of inconsistency that winds me up. And people are going to come back and say, yeah, but John Stones was coming across. Mo Salah had about 2 hours to get a shot away had he stayed on his feet there before John Stones was getting there to shut down the angle. So, that just doesn't wash with me. It really doesn't. I think you need to. I think you just need a little bit of luck from time to time in these kind of things. And it feels like Arsenal fans that we never get that. We just never get it. Let's move on to the kind of wider topic about Mikel Arteta's, the job he's done so far, where this leaves us now. What do we do from here? So get involved in the comments. What are your thoughts on the process, if you like? Are you still on board with it? Are you worried about it? Do you feel like Mikel is to blame for some of the problems that this team has at the moment? Do you think it's out of Mikel Arteta's hands? And whilst you do that, I'll share with you guys my thoughts on it. After the game yesterday, my Twitter notifications were going nuts. And a lot of people, and it's an absolutely fair question to ask. It's fair game. I'm not having a go. A lot of people ask me, well, how comes you gave Unai Emery so much stick, yet you haven't turned on Mikel Arteta yet? Why are you not consistent in your views? And I thought long and hard about this. As I said earlier on, I couldn't record the podcast straight after the game. Had to go to work, and you're sitting on the tube and you've got nothing to do, and there's nothing to distract you on the tube nowadays. It's dead, ghost town. And I'm sitting there on the Victoria line, and I'm thinking about it, and I was thinking about the question, because a few people asked me. Sophie from the Highbury squad was one of the people that asked me that question as well. And I was sitting there and I was thinking, why do I give a lot more leeway to Mikel Arteta than I did to Unai Emery? Why is that? What is it that's different about the two? What is the factor that makes me feel as though Mikel Arteta is more deserving of time than Unai Emery was? And I came to the conclusion, having studied the facts, as Rafa Benitez would say, having looked at some data, having looked at the two respective squads that the managers had at their disposal, having looked at what they were allowed to do or not allowed to do in the transfer windows, I came to the conclusion that actually there aren't really any facts that back up my case or back me up in terms of affording more time and more leeway and more patience to Mikel Arteta than I did to Unai Emery. The only thing that puts me in this place where I do feel like I still want Mikel Arteta to be given time is my gut feeling. I can't explain it with facts, and maybe that's a worry. Maybe that is a telltale sign of that actually, maybe this is not really working out as well as I think it is. It is a gut feeling for me, though. It is a gut feeling of mine that Mikel Arteta will come through this and prove himself to be a really, really good coach. That's my view. And my gut feeling on Unai Emery was correct. So I'm going to stick with it for now until proven otherwise. Look, if Mikel Arteta at the start of next season is still struggling and we find ourselves in a place where we haven't improved and we're still not competitive as far as those Champions League places are concerned, then I'll be the first one to say I was wrong. I've got no issue in doing that. But right now, in my opinion, for me, Mikel Arteta is living off of a gut feeling that lots and lots of Arsenal fans and the Arsenal hierarchy have about his ability to go on and become one of the best, about his ability to oversee this rebuild as effectively as possible. I genuinely think that's what it is. I feel like obviously the FA Cup earned him some love. There's no doubt about that. In fact, he's an ex-Arsenal player as well, ex-Arsenal captain. Obviously plays a part there as well. But as I said, it's just a gut feel from me. It's a gut feel that Mikel Arteta, given the time, will eventually get it right. So for that reason, I'm not Mikel Arteta out. I don't blame him for what happened yesterday because he picked the team that I would have picked. I don't blame him for what happened at Wolves because, again, he picked the team I would have picked. And when you look at the two performances in isolation, you look at the one against Wolves, prior to going down to 10 men, probably the best 45 minutes of football you've seen from Arsenal this season, which showed that we were still on that track that we'd been on, that upward trend. The upward curve was still being maintained. And then obviously what happened, and we went down to 10, and that very much changed the complex of the context, of the game. And then the Aston Villa one, where although we weren't brilliant, you still feel as though Mikel Arteta had set the team up right. And I genuinely do believe that. I think the right players were on the pitch. I think, there were moments where we kind of threatened to lift the tempo a little bit and move the ball a little bit quicker and drag people out of position. And it just didn't come. And it didn't come, I think, largely down to fatigue. People would say that, Mikel Arteta's been wrong in the past to leave certain players out, to leave players on the bench that perhaps he had question marks and worries and doubts about their fitness. But, when you're talking about the likes of Emile Smith-Rowe, who looked a shadow of the player we all know he is because he looked unfit. You look at Thomas Partey, who had to break down again had to be substituted again because he broke down. You look at Kieran Tierney, who's still not fit. And it's no wonder that Mikel Arteta has had to make the changes he had over recent weeks. Some of them, most of them, in fact, pretty much all of them have been enforced. You've got to protect your players. And in a period where we're at times now playing 2 games in 4 days, you play on a Saturday and you play on a Tuesday, it's very, very difficult for the boss. It's very difficult. And you can't say you want him to move out all the dead wood, jump up and down when he does it, and then complain when the squad's a little bit lighter than it would have been previously, because it's all part of the process. And I hate using that word because I know a lot of people poke fun at it, but that's the reality of the situation. That's the reality of the situation we're in. We're a football club who are in a bad way. We're a football club who need to undergo a huge rebuild. Edu and Arteta have been entrusted with doing that, but it's going to take time. And just because we won a few games on the spin, it never convinced me that Arsenal had completely turned the corner and were the finished article, and it shouldn't have convinced anybody else. If anybody else was getting ahead of themselves, then more fool them. I did feel going into this run of games, Wolves, Villa, Leeds, that if we took 7 points, we'd be back in the mix for a UEFA Champions League spot. I do feel, unfortunately, now, though, having lost those 2 games, that the top 4 is probably gone for us. And I know mathematically, it's not impossible. You look at Arsenal down in 10th on 31 points. Liverpool, who of course got beat today, they're on 40 points and we've played the same games. So it's not impossible. But you look at how up and down this team is in terms of the results. And you do worry and you do wonder if we're capable of putting the type of run together that is needed. That's the problem, isn't it? At the end of the day, we are developing. Earlier on in the season, the performances were shit. The results were shit. The performances picked up. Arsenal started picking up points. You come out of the back of those games at Wolves and Villa, and I still can't sit here and say Arsenal were terrible in either of those games because that simply wasn't the case. So although the results didn't go our way, you can still see that the level of performance is generally better than it was at the back end of last year, isn't it? That's a fact. So yeah, I'm not Mikel Arteta out yet, and I won't be this season because I do believe he needs this season. I'll be disappointed if we crash out the Europa League and disappointed, obviously, if our campaign fizzles out. But he hasn't had a full season yet. This will be his first full season. And next season, I think you can start to look at Mikel Arteta with a little bit more scrutiny. That's my view. Having said all of that, I completely get why there are some fans out there asking questions. Arsenal was struggling last season. That's why Unai Emery was shown the door. In comes Mikel Arteta. And in terms of league position, in terms of points, etc., we're not any better off. We've lost 10 games. 10. of our first 23. We've won just 9 games in the Premier League this season. It's not good enough. There's no shying away from that. There's no getting around that. Yes, there have been injuries. Yes, there have been other issues. But there's no getting away from the fact that Arsenal in the Premier League up until now have simply not been good enough. That needs to improve. How much that will improve between now and the end of the season in terms of our league position, I don't know. But if it gives us time to get the foundations in place, if we do continue to perform in an improved manner, then it will give us confidence going into the next season. It feels shit, doesn't it, talking about the next season when we're only in February, but that's the reality. This was a transitional year, and nobody wants to hear it. Nobody wants to see it. But that is the reality of where Arsenal are at. We had fallen so much further than a lot of Arsenal fans, wanted to believe. But that is the reality. Let's go back to the live comments. Thomas says, we have had more losses than wins over halfway through the season. Had this happened in another big club in Europe, the coach would have been fired a long time ago. We have no ambitions as a club or as fans. What else have you guys got to say following yesterday's game? Let's pick up a couple more. What have we got here? Oh my God, there's so many comments since I stopped talking the last time. Let's pick up some. Thomas is going in on Mikel Arteta. He says we have to wake up now. He's an amateur with amateur assistants. Who are these assistants? They're not amateurs, Thomas. They're very experienced people. Look them up, mate. They're very, very experienced people. What else have we got here? Dean Francis says, do you hear yourself? If you're talking to me, I can hear myself loud and clear. That's what these are for. What else have we got? Kevin John says, the lineup was good yesterday. Cedric's mistake cost us the game. Aston Villa went into defensive mode. That was the outcome of the game. Yeah, I agree with you. You know, you give a team like Aston Villa, who are so effective on the counter-attack, a lead like that, then you're always making it very, very difficult for yourself. I agree, Kevin. I don't hold the manager accountable for what happened yesterday. Dominic says people really need to realise this process is going to take a long time, and the media encourages us to have reactionary views. Mikey B says, keep this narrative up, Harry. We need some common sense out there. Fans are too hyperbolic these days. Gundikagan, have I said that right? Gundikagan says, I think we as a fan base were not informed about the extent of the turmoil in the background, and as a result, we came down hard on Emery. I have made sure now that I should be patient and respect the process. Yeah, maybe we were a little bit harsh on Emery. You know, I sometimes think that about myself. I really went in on Unai Emery. I don't regret saying that he wasn't the right man for Arsenal. That was what I believed at the time, and I still believe he wasn't right for Arsenal. But when you see and more starts to come to the forefront in terms of what was actually going on in the boardroom, in behind the scenes at the club, then yeah, you're probably right. You know, you do kind of get the feeling as a fan that maybe we didn't realize how bad it was behind the scenes. I completely agree with that. What else have we got here? Steffi NYC Gooner, how you doing? Says Arteta has made positive changes. However, we need to be realistic. Many of the players just aren't good enough. Yeah, agree. Colin Jr. says, let's face it, we're giving Arteta time because he's a prodigy of one of the best managers of all time. We thought Arteta would be something like Pep. Arsenal isn't a healthy club for him. Yeah, I mean, obviously the good work that he did with Pep Guardiola helped. And that obviously helped raise his profile, didn't it? And it's why he was sought after by the Gunners. But I don't think he is as much like I almost said Nicolas Pepe, as much as Pep Guardiola as people make out. You know, I think he's a bit more pragmatic than Pep Guardiola. I think defensively he's a little bit more clued up than Pep Guardiola. And I think that's where his strength lies. Obviously, Pep Guardiola has bags and bags more of experience, having won all the big trophies, the top trophies in world football. You know, I'm not saying Mikel Arteta is going to go on to have a career like Pep Guardiola, but I do have confidence in him going on and succeeding. And again, as I said earlier on in the show, it is just a gut feeling. But I'm going to trust that gut feeling for now. I'm going to stick with it, because sacking somebody now in February and bringing somebody else means we're going to have to start the so-called process all over again. And I'm not game for that. I got to be honest. Sam Tonk says, Arsenal fans are so quick to moan and turn on the players or Arteta after a loss, forgetting what we've come through. We hired him for the long haul. He needs time and to bring through young core. Mr. A says, Harry, why have we trusted these guys with the rebuild? In reality, it's actually quite ridiculous and a bit absurd. Yeah, I mean, in terms of their experience, you do look at them and think there are probably more experienced candidates out there. There's no question about that. But they've obviously shown something, and again, this is where sometimes as supporters, we have to know our place a little bit, right? And we often look at situations from the outside in, and we seem to think we know all the ins and outs of it, exactly what's happened, who said what to who, how this transfer went down, how that transfer went down, how this argument took place, and the reality is we don't. I've been in jobs where I've had to hire people, and I've hired people that had little experience in comparison to some of the other candidates, because they wowed me in the interview, because they came to the table and I thought brought something refreshing and something different. And I wanted to give them a chance. And that's probably what Mikel Arteta and Edu have done. They've come there, they've given a good account of themselves, and the club have put their trust and their faith in them. And I look, Mr. A, I completely agree about, it might have been smarter to go down a more experienced route. Got no issue with that. But, again, that's what I'm saying. We just need to know that, or need to bear it in mind that we don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes. When kind of questioning decisions like that. On the face of it, I agree with you. There were more. There were more experienced candidates out there, but it wasn't to be. And it's got to be the right fit. It's got to be the right people, etc., etc., etc. Andreas in Cyprus says, Harry, for the first time, Arsenal might not qualify for Europe for next season. The squad is capable to win these games. It's all about next season. We are not clinical. Yeah, agreed. It wouldn't be the first time we've not qualified for Europe, but it would be the first time in a long time, that's for sure. What else have we got? Rawinda says, when you are building, you're going to have iffy results. Yeah, completely agree. Anton says, process equals change of culture equals Bellerin skipper equals Willian always takes some part in every game equals no expectations. That's a little bit harsh, man. I really don't get why Willian deserves it. I don't get why Hector Bellerin gets it so badly. I really don't. But anyway, that's one for another day. Rahul says, we're a long way from becoming a force again. We need to understand that the players are still below par. We first need to sell a few more of these players. Yeah, look, we need upgrades still. We look at that Arsenal team and I think we can all agree that they're better than 10th. They're better than where they're showing now. When everybody's fit and available, we are better than 10th. But the reality is, throughout the course of the season, people haven't always been fit and available. We have had injury problems. We have had injuries to key players. We've had players going down with COVID. We've had things going on behind the scenes. So we can all agree that, the team is better than what it should be right now. But I guarantee if we were in 7th, everybody would still be moaning. So in order to get to that next level, the level whereby we're competing for a Champions League place again, until the very end of the season, we need upgrades in certain areas. And, if the money's not there, then it's going to have to be, going down a slightly different route, looking at the youth, looking at the youngsters, trying to blood them through. But that takes time. All takes time. A lot of you giving Willian stickers. Well, look, I don't really want to get too caught up in the Willian discussion because he came on as a late sub yesterday. And, statistically, most late subs don't impact football matches. So let's not get bogged down on that. You bring the guy on for the last, 15, 20 minutes and you're expecting him to work miracles. It don't work like that. Let's judge him on the games that he plays a substantial amount of time. And the last time he did that was in the game against Man United when he came on at halftime, and I thought he did okay. Cyril, one of our members, says, is Ober up to his old tricks, like coasting along as he did in his final year at Dortmund? His lack of poaching goals is missing. I disagree, Cyril. I just think that he's a one-dimensional striker. And as I said, I'm going to put it all together in a video and I'm going to evidence it and show you guys exactly what I mean for our gold members and above this week. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. It will come on. It will come out on Wednesday. I just think that as a striker, as a forward, he's a little bit one-dimensional. And in the role that Mikel Arteta is asking our centre-forwards to play, you can't be that. It's almost as though if you could have a hybrid between the strengths of Lacazette and then the goal-scoring prowess and ability of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, you'd have the perfect thing. But we seem to have all the elements, but in two separate players. And I used to say that about our midfield. You know, we had players who were physical. We had players who were good on the ball. We had technical ability, but it was spread across 3 or 4 different players. And that, of course, is a massive problem. What else have we got? Ella says, you can blame Arteta for lineups, tactics, subs, and in-game management. But how can you blame Arteta for individual player mistakes, missed chances, and referee incompetence? Yeah, I agree with that. Marble Halls TV says Mikel is making too many mistakes. The subs yesterday were poor. Again, I've spoken about it already. You know, I've spoken about the subs already, but you know, Partey's one was enforced. You know, the Erdogan one I thought worked quite well. It's just that Willian one, isn't it? It's the fact that Willian came on is why people are upset about the subs, I think. And the other one, I guess you're right, you can question is the change of Ober for Laka. There's no doubt about that. Mr. A asks a really interesting question. I want to touch on this one. What is the threshold for deciding the process isn't going in the right direction? 15 losses and out of all cups. That's shocking and unacceptable. No. I think as football fans, sometimes we forget to use the very thing that God blessed us with to make assessments, our eyes. Put the stats to one side for a minute. Put the facts to one side in terms of, you know, when people talk about number of completed passes, shots on target, all of that. Are you looking at this Arsenal side at the moment thinking that they are improved on what they were 3 months ago? Because I am. And I do think that under normal circumstances, if we had a few days break between each game, you know, we've got a decent little break now between obviously the game yesterday and we don't play again until Sunday now. So obviously that's a positive. But, you know, I do think that the performances since that game against Chelsea have been significantly better overall than what we were seeing prior to that. So that for me gives me an indication that we are moving in the right direction. And when you're looking at the defeats as well, you know, it's all good saying, yeah, we've lost 10 games, but go through those 10 games and look at the nature of the defeats. If they're defeats by small margins, if they're defeats because of the small details in the game, obviously they're still defeats. You still don't get any points for them. I totally accept that. But a defeat whereby you get beaten by a referee like we did at Wolves on Tuesday night should not be regarded the same as a defeat in which you get hammered like we did by Aston Villa at the Emirates Stadium where we lost 3-0 that day. So that's the point I'm making. You know, it's all good looking at the stats, and I use stats a lot to back up some of my points, but that's the thing. Stats should be used to back up points. They shouldn't be points. That's how I see it. They're there for you to draw on to add further layers to what you're saying, but they're not the be all and end all. Sometimes just use your eyes. That's the best test of whether a team are playing well or not. Did you watch the game and think that Arsenal played better than they have been playing in previous months? If they are, and I would argue that they are, and I would argue that even yesterday the performance was still significantly better than some of what we saw at the back end of last year, then you have to think that we're moving in the right direction. That's my view on that. What else have we got here? We've had a new member sign up. Where is it? Let me give you a big shout out. Big shout out to Tallyman. Thank you so much for signing up to the channel, and welcome to the Chronicles of a Gooner family. Make sure you find the link to the Discord server, which is on our members tab, or the community tab. I can't remember which one, but yeah, it's available to members. Get over into that Discord server. Come and join us. Let's have a little bit of a discussion. That's what we do in there. It's great fun. Nice little community building. And of course, thank you for your support. You guys supporting this channel as a freelancer gives me a lot more freedom to be able to spend more time putting together higher quality content for you guys and more regularly. So I really, really appreciate the memberships. I really appreciate those of you who have taken those up already, and those who just watch the channel in general. But the members, you're doing a massive thing for me. You're helping me to be able to dedicate more time to this channel, which is ultimately what I really want to do. So Tallyman, thank you so much and welcome. Don't forget, if you're interested in having a look at our membership proposition, click on the link in the description, and you can check out what's on offer, and you can decide if any of those 3 tiers are appealing to you, and if so, you can come and join us. Right, let's go through the chat box. Let's pick out a couple more bits. We've got around about 9 minutes left. Feridoon asks a question about the summer, looking ahead. Realistically, how much money do you think Arsenal will spend in the summer? I don't think that question can be answered until you know how this season ends up. If Arsenal end up without European football, I fear that the purse strings will be kept closed or pulled tight, if that's what you do with purse strings. I don't even know, but you know what I'm trying to say. I don't think there'll be much available if Arsenal don't make Europe. I've got to be honest, unless you're going to see the Cronkies invest, unless you're going to see the Cronkies essentially do what they did with Thomas Partey and make it happen, you know, because they want it to happen. So yeah, I'm a little bit worried about the summer. I'm a little bit worried about the consequences of Arsenal not getting in Europe altogether. You know, obviously Champions League is ideal, but even Europa League for our finances is becoming more and more significant. So it's a really good question, Feridoon, but I don't think even Arsenal know right now. I think they're waiting on how this season goes and to see how it's all going to unfold, and then kind of decide financially what is doable. And also, you know, the pandemic as well, you know, how's that going to go in the next few months? We know here in the UK over 12 million people have been vaccinated now, which is fantastic. But when are we going to be at the point where people can start going back to games? And you know, that makes a difference to clubs, particularly Arsenal, particularly Tottenham, who have such huge match day revenues because they are in London, because their ticket prices are fairly expensive as well. So yeah, be interesting to see how that goes. But as I say, it's good. You know, we won't know until the summer. I don't think so anyway. What else have we got here? Let's see what you guys are saying. Marble Halls TV disagrees with me about what the games that we've lost by fine margins. We lost to Spurs. Spurs away is not embarrassing. Burnley, yeah, that one was embarrassing. Villa, been a good side this season. City and Liverpool, I don't expect us to get a single point from those games anyway. So of those games that you've mentioned, right? Spurs away, Villa at home was not impossible given the way they started this season. But I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You can have the Villa one. So what you're saying, of those games that we've lost that you've highlighted, I would say back to you that Spurs away is not a game we had any right to win. City away is not a game that we had any right to win, and neither is Liverpool away. So, you know, those ones are irrelevant to me. That's what I'm trying to say. You know, we've been on some horrible away trips so far this season. You know, we've been Spurs, we've been Liverpool, we've been United, we've been City, we've been Everton, we've been to Leeds. and at the end of the season, when it's all evened out and everybody's played everybody twice in 38 games on the table for everyone, and there isn't some teams in 7th having 2 games in hand, a team below having 1 game in hand, when all is said and done, that's where you can make a proper judgment and a proper assessment on whether the season has been a success or not. So, yeah, let's see. Let's see how that goes. Big shout out to Thomas as well. He says, smash the like button. Good to have a place we can share joy and frustration. Smash that like button for Harry. Thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate your support as always. What else have we got? Interesting point raised here from Jid F32, one of our members. And I haven't looked this up, so I'm going to trust you on this one, and I'll take a look at it later. But he says, Bellerin has more assists, more chances created, tackles, blocks, interceptions, aerial duels won, less goals conceded on his flank than Kieran Tierney. So Bellerin has more assists, has created more chances, has made more tackles, has put in more blocks, made more interceptions, won more aerial duels, and conceded less goals on his flank than Kieran Tierney. So why have Arsenal fans convinced themselves that he's bad? If that's true, and I'm not saying that you've made it up, but I haven't looked at it, so I've got to check it out. But if that's true, that is a really, really interesting point. Really interesting point. And I've been beating the Hector Bellerin drum for a while now. Look, do I think he's the best right back in the world? Is he a prime Dani Alves? Is he a prime Cafu? Of course he's fucking not. Of course he's not. We know the guy is not the best right back in the world. We know he has limitations. But he's nowhere near as bad as some of the Arsenal fans make out. And I really don't understand the hate and the abuse and the vitriol that's directed to a guy who clearly loves Arsenal Football Club and is committed to Arsenal Football Club. I agree with you on there, Jid, mate. People, as I say, sometimes you should use your eyes. And sometimes, you need the stats to put things into context a little bit more. And that's my point. Stats are there to back up arguments, and the argument that Hector Bellerin is not as bad as people make out is backed up by that very stat, my friend, and those very stats, that you brought to the table. So fair play to you, man. That's some really good research. I'll be sure to use that one. Let's move forward down the chat. What else have we got? Rahil Durrani says, for those who want Arteta out, my question to them would be, who do they want him to be replaced with? Allegri, he plays defensive. They'll be calling for his head in a few months too. The thing is with someone like Allegri, right? And I'm a massive fan of Serie A. I do think that he gets labelled wrongly. He's not as defensive as people make out. He did change his system at Juve on a number of occasions. He did go to a 4-3-3 at one point. He did become, a little bit more expansive as the years went by. Actually, they were playing some of their best football prior to Cristiano Ronaldo going there. It's not to say that Ronaldo is not a wonderful talent, but you do feel that when he's in a side, he becomes the focus, and sometimes it takes away from other elements of the team. Allegri's not as defensive as people make out. He builds his teams on a solid foundation, but he is capable of putting a team out there that can go out and pull people apart and be that little bit more expansive than people think. So look, I'm a massive fan of Max Allegri, but if I was Max Allegri looking at this project, there's no money there. Would I take the job? I don't think I would. And, I hear Arsenal fans going, yeah, but we're the Arsenal. Yeah, to us, Arsenal means the world. But to Max Allegri, Arsenal doesn't mean jack shit. To Max Allegri, he loves it's AC Milan, Juventus, Inter. Those are the big hitters in Italy. The love we have for our club, don't be fooled in thinking that people who have no affiliation with the side, who grew up, following other teams, would have that same love and that same desire to come to Arsenal that we might if we were in that position one day. So, that's important to note. That's really important to note. I don't think he would take the job. And I think that is why, in many ways, Arsenal had to go down the Mikel Arteta route, because they couldn't convince one of the more seasoned managers that they would have the tools to achieve the objectives in front of them. And, I'm not saying that's right. I want to see Arsenal, go out and get the very best. And when Mikel was appointed, I was one of the first people that went, not sure about this. He's won me over a period of time. As much as I've sat here tonight and I've backed him for the most part, and I'm telling people to be calm and to chill out about it a little bit and to try and be a little bit more patient. I do realize that there are reasons to question him. I do realize that those who question him are doing it because they care about the football club in most cases, not all the cases, but in most cases. And I do accept that people will have different opinions to me. That's absolutely fine. It's just that sometimes people have to get out of this notion of thinking that we're playing a game of FIFA or Championship Manager where you can just go and get the manager you want, bang, set it up and it's done. Or, you can sign all the players you want. Football is a very complex world, and there is a lot that goes on behind the scenes that we, as fans, don't have the first clue about. And that's why I always say when people are throwing different names about, it's like when people say, oh, Arsenal signed Messi. Well, it's obvious, isn't it? There's not a football club in the world that wouldn't want Lionel Messi. But there's obviously factors that prevent that happening. And sometimes you need to take a step back and think about what those factors are. And if, as a football club, we can overcome them. And people like Max Allegri, I think that he's out of reach at the moment, given where Arsenal currently are. People talked about Carlo Ancelotti before Arteta came in. I was a massive advocate of that. I thought that Carlo would come in. But then you look at the project that Carlo's embarking on at Everton in terms of an owner with lots of money who's going to back him. The expectation is not massive. And Carlo probably thought that's an appealing project. I'm not even saying that Arsenal did move for Carlo Ancelotti. I don't know that for a fact. I would have loved to have him. But that's my point. Sometimes things don't always fall your way. Arsenal ain't the only football club in the world fighting for the best managers, fighting for the best players, fighting for the best coaches. Very complex world out there. And it's very easy to throw names into the chat box and say, yeah, we want this guy, we want that guy. But is it viable? Is it actually doable? I don't think so. I don't think it's always as simple as people make out. And look, Inter Yanan says, money talks, Harry. We can get any manager we want if the money is right. We went for the unambitious option because it was cheap. Yet that plays a massive part. That plays a massive part. The money thing is huge when it comes to Arsenal. We all know that. But is it like we can be outraged about it and we can sit and moan about it? But the reality is it's not our money, is it? It's the club's money, and they're going to do what they want with it. They went for Arteta. That's what they did. And so there's no point in dreaming about getting managers that our club are simply not willing to put their hands in their pockets for. That's the reality of the situation. Big thank you to the blind Gooner for his very kind super chat donation. If you haven't already, make sure you check out the blind Gooner's YouTube channel. Puts out some fantastic content over there, so make sure you get over there and check out Daniel's show. He says, where do you realistically think we could finish the season given the latest results? I think anywhere between 6th and 8th is still on. It's still achievable. And it would be respectable given the run that we went on. Obviously not acceptable, not where we want to be. But if it was a 7th, 8th position, but we were at least closer to the European spots than we were, maybe had a decent run in the Europa League, then might be minimal progress, but it would be some progress, right. That's that for tonight. We're going to leave it there. Inter Yanan just pointing out in the chat, by the way, he says 6th to 8th. Your goal was top 4 last week. Yeah, well, we've just lost 2 games on the bounce, so you'll have to understand why I'm adjusting my objectives slightly. I mean, that's what you do. You look at the situation as it is on the day you're discussing it. And I said it at the top of the show. I don't think the top 4 is on anymore, barring an amazing run and a complete meltdown from the sides in front of us. I think the top 4 is gone. And so 6th to 8th it feels about right now. And he says dropping standards. It's not me dropping standards. It's me adjusting my objective based on where we're actually at and not having my head in the clouds. Because if you're expecting Arsenal to chase the top 4 we're nowhere near it. What's going to happen to you at the end of the season? You're going to sit there disappointed when in actual fact, your ambition, your objective was never a realistic one in the first place. There you go. Right. Big hello to the Algerian Gooners as well, and to everybody else joining us in the live chat. Thank you all for your continued support. Thank you to those listening via the audio platforms as well. Make sure, if you haven't already, that you smash the like button. Before we go, let's just quickly check in on how many likes we've got at the moment. As I always say, the more we get, the more it helps the show. There's only 83 at the moment, but there's over 200 of you watching. So come on, let's get that at least to 125 by the time the outro plays. Don't forget, if you want to become a member as well, and this week our members piece of content is focusing on Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang and his up and down season so far, where his best position is, etc., etc. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. If you're a gold member or above, that'll be dropping on Wednesday. If you're interested in signing up and you haven't done so already, click the link in the description. We'll be back very, very soon with more. Until then, take care and up the Arsenal. Cheers.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.